many people talk about precious metals as being an investment, and I guess in some ways you could say that it is. Certainly, silver offers amazing potential, maybe the most undervalued asset on the planet. What gold and silver represent to me are wealth,
Mm-hmm.
5,000-year-old plus wealth that has outlived German hyperinflation, outlived the Great Depression, and still is immutable wealth. And long after the dollar bills that are in our wallets are hanging from a frame in the Smithsonian as an example of what used to
Right.
be,
Yeah.
gold and silver will still be immutable wealth. And so when we talk about what is gold and silver, to me, it is wealth. And it has been all the way back to biblical times,
Mm-hmm.
whether you're talking kings and queens and pharaohs and emperors and anyone of nobility owned precious metals, not as an investment, but as a form of immutable wealth that is able to be passed on through the generations. So from a springboard of where we go from here in this evening's discussion, to me, it is of wealth and of wealth that takes on greater significance in times of uncertainty and of turmoil.
Mm-hmm.
And it is for that reason that you could call it insurance as well. Insurance against the craziness of our government, of the reckless monetary policies of the Federal Reserve, of massive money printing, irresponsibility, to say the least, and changing tides of historical significance. Yes, it takes on a role of insurance and of protection against crazy times, but most people only look at it in that light as, the sky's falling, you better own gold and silver. To me, it's not just that. And it's
Right.
there if that
Yeah.
happens. And history has proven that that does happen at times, and certainly when we least expect it. But more relevant, it's money that I know that when I pass it on to my children and their children and their children and their children in the year 3000, it's going to have great value, as it always has for the last 5,000 years. So that's the way that I look at gold and silver. We've been in business, as I mentioned, for 33 years. We've done over 8 billion in sales, starting from a loan from a friend and selling insurance policies. We've recently eclipsed 8 billion in sales. We've never had a customer complaint,
Wow.
ever.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who will say if you don't physically own it, have it in your possession, you don't own it. And that's not really true, but I understand why they say that. Removal of counterparty risk is a big deal. And so you have a better likelihood of being ripped off by the system than you do by a burglar, knowing you have metal in your house if hidden properly. So for those folks who don't want to leave it at home or are buying too much to feel comfortable with it at home, we have storage facilities through Brinks, which is the most respected name in the storage industry for over 100 years,
Mm-hmm.
or in the vaulted security space for the last 100 years,
Wow.
around North America for those folks. But yeah, always best to hold it yourself if you
Mm-hmm.
can.
Mm-hmm.
Silver is vastly undervalued geologically and historically in its relationship to gold. In just about every metric to which you would compare silver against, it is historically undervalued, maybe the most undervalued asset on the planet. And the price of it is, and I don't want to go down this road because it's complex, and I know that this is not the audience we're talking to tonight, but the price is managed on the futures market by a handful of very large banks. But what's very interesting and what is betraying the price is the massive drawdown of supply from the world's commodity exchanges, which have never really been thought of as entities that deliver physical metal. But indeed, the London Metals Exchange has, as in the case of silver, the lowest amount of silver that it's ever had in the history of the exchange. It's a 140-year-old exchange. And they have just tiny, tiny, tiny amounts there that are making it seem that if the numbers continue in terms of the drawdown, by mid 2023, it would have no more silver left. The COMEX exchange here in the United States, where the price of gold and silver are set globally, at least during New York hours, has witnessed a 75% drawdown in all of its silver over the last 18 months. Focus on the number of ounces more than anything. And I've talked a lot about the BRICS nations and what's happening with the potential loss of the petro standard. And This is real. It's very real and it's very frightening. And the ultimate end game, if we lose the reserve status, is of a dollar that collapses globally. And when all those dollars come cascading home, because since 1974, every country on the planet has had to own dollars to buy oil. That was the deal we made with the Saudi kingdom and with OPEC. And so when you talk about losing the reserve status, if they come out and say we're going to open up oil purchases in other currencies or the new BRICS currency, not dollars, not just dollars, or maybe not dollars at all, just the BRICS currency, which we're joining, and all 13 OPEC producing countries are on the Chinese Belt Road Initiative, which is the largest infrastructure project in human history. All of the BRICS countries are in it. The US isn't. If we lose that and the dollars get dumped, the dollar collapses. The byproduct of that inflation is spiked interest rates.
Right.
You have to have massively higher interest rates if your currency is massively depreciating in order to compensate for the loss of the value of the currency.
Okay.
And when interest rates spike, everything in this country that makes people feel wealthy is inversely correlated to that. Stocks, bonds, and real estate. Rates rise, all three collapse. And it's real. So owning precious metals is not about getting wealthy. If you own enough of it, you will be. It's about protecting yourself from what is a global shift. And I would argue it's coming quickly. Well, the BRICS nations, BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, China, India, and South Africa. But I can give you a list of the countries that have either applied or are applying. In 2019, the Bank of International Settlements, which is the central bank in Switzerland, quietly reclassified gold as the world's only other tier one reserve asset. Let me say that one more time slowly for you. Since 1944, the only tier one reserve asset, means a riskless asset, has been US dollars or treasuries. Collateral. If I lend you $1 million, you give me a briefcase of $1 million in $100 bills. That's tier one. There's no risk to me. I don't care if you don't pay me back. I got your cash.
Right.
Riskless.
Okay.
The only other tier one asset in the world is now gold, and the Bank of International Settlements did that in 2019. So remember all the countries I mentioned to you that are going to join BRICS? Here is a most recent listing of their gold holdings as a percentage of their total reserves. Venezuela, 82%. Uzbekistan, 65%. Kazakhstan, 63%. Bolivia, 55%. Lebanon, 49%. Belarus, 40%. Turkey, 29%. Pakistan, 29%. Kyrgyzstan, 22%. These countries that want to join BRICS are massively accumulating what? The world's only other tier one reserve asset other than US dollars.